Go ahead.
We on?
Yeah. I was just trying to get to my stopwatch or my timer to tell me when it's close to the time.
Sound? Okay, so episode 5, Grey Togs Talk, take 2. So although we've made several points throughout the previous 4 videos about how you should go with what you've got, last week's was so much of a fucking disaster that we couldn't use it at all for various reasons. So we had to fuck it off. And here we are for a take 2. But I think we've both had some good, we took some good learning from last week's. I know you've tweaked your setup a lot and
Massive.
I've tried to improve mine a little bit, so hopefully, although we can't see each other now because we're just literally recording to cameras and audio separately, fingers crossed this all works.
Fingers crossed indeed.
So, we had a good chat last week about data and looking after your data. I think we just need to kind of just go over that again and be a bit more punchy about what the outcome what the outcome from it was, or our opinions on it, because obviously it's all about opinion, isn't it?
Yeah.
You had a quite a stressful story. I mean, they're all stressful stories about your first data loss, but yours was particularly stressful, I thought. So if you want to recap that with us.
God, I never thought I wanted to relive this moment any more than once, and here I am saying it for the second time. No, yeah, it's just obviously it's just stressing the importance of data and how big of an influence or an impact it can have on you, not just on your professional life but also on your personal life. If a data breach or a loss of data was to happen, which I would not recommend. So, kind of what I did last week was kind of told the story about when I was early on in my photographic journey, and around like most people, you'd obviously start off. Some people would even just probably save stuff to their laptops or PCs or whatever that they're using. Once you get a little bit more advanced and you understand it a little bit better, you usually tend to then go into like portable hard drives, which is typically the starting point. And as things progress, obviously you go through the different things in storage, which we'll talk about possibly in this session or definitely in separate sessions, about the options that you've got available. But for me, I was just kind of on this road of like new creator, just getting out there, doing little bits and bobs here and there. Still kind of toying with the idea if it was even something that I could make reality or not. And I had everything kind of saving, like any projects that I did, to one particular small hard drive, which I think I've actually got there, funnily enough. But basically what it was just keeping on re-downloading pictures and whatever onto this small hard drive. It was about a terabyte in space. And I started doing a few paid gigs and things like that. And at this particular moment in time, I had on this hard drive filled up quite a lot of its capacity. And I had an event that I was doing on this particular weekend, and 2 events that I'd done previous. I think one was a christening and one was a non-do-over, not that a christening is, but a wedding. And obviously the wedding that I was doing that weekend. So basically it was at a time where I was just kind of getting to grips with dealing with multiple clients and really measuring out your work-life balance, which wasn't even possible because I had to work and life balance. I had like 3 things to balance out, which is a lot harder than 2. So this hard drive was like full, so it started throwing up a couple of little spanners and little errors and stuff like that. Much like most things, when they're full to capacity, they just don't work the way that they should be. And this one particular day when I was doing this gig, this wedding at the weekend, and I had my other 2 things kind of already backed up to the hard drive, in my opinion, what was at the time what I called backed up. And I took the laptop with me, and some of the files were kind of processing. I think it was actually on the seat of my car when I was travelling to this particular gig that I had on this weekend. And didn't think nothing of it. I was just driving along. Obviously I seen that was working away on the seat next to me, one of those things. And then by kind of midway through the gig, and he stopped calling it gig, midway through the actual event, I noticed that the laptop had lost all charge, and obviously that meant that the hard drive wasn't synced, wasn't connected anymore, and obviously disconnected. So, as we know, if you unplug a hard drive, or if you don't know, if you unplug a hard drive without officially going to like the Finder if you've got a Mac, or Settings if you've got a PC, and actually disconnecting it, like pressing the eject button, there are possibilities that it can have not a very good experience. It can like corrupt the drive and corrupt the data that's
So
on it and things like that.
Just to jump in there for a second, it's imperative it doesn't happen while you're doing some kind of data transfer. If it's not doing anything, realistically, you can just whip it in and out. But not to steal your story, but I've thought about this since you told me the story originally. Mainly, I think your issue happened because it was mid-process of doing what you were wanting it to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it.
So,
and it's obviously because the laptop loses power, and the power from the laptop powers the actual hard drive to work. So as you said there, it will stop. Now on these other hard drives, on the older hard drives that people don't tend to use anymore, not a solid state. They have like a little, kind of like a CD, little jog wheel, in case you didn't know. And it basically gets read by these couple of little prongs that kind of fall down, and they read the data that's on this little mini disc that's inside the hard drive. Now, because obviously I lost power during that, and that went off mid-transfer of data, that day wrapped up and stuff like that, powered it on the next day, charged the computer up, went to locate, my files and that again, and the hard drive wasn't connecting to the laptop anymore. It just wasn't discoverable, wasn't visible. So that was a bit strange. So obviously you do the old-fashioned way, take the plug out, give it a little blow, making sure there's no dust or anything. Restart the computer just in case again. But again, when I plugged it back in, it wasn't being recognised. Again, not ideal. Started to worry a little bit. And for a couple of days I couldn't actually put the new events information onto my hard drive, and I couldn't obviously get the other events that I'd already done off it. So I'm in this sticky position now. And as time went on, and basically I started looking online what it could be and things like that. And at the time I didn't know. It was just, a few people said different things, and it's just like self-diagnosis on Google. You never really know where you're truly at, but a lot of people will tell you their opinions on where they think you might be. So took it back to, I think I got it from a Curry's or something, not sponsored, and said to them, the issue I was having, and they said, obviously you've got a couple of options, but basically what we need to do is send it off to our specialist team. They'll have a look at it and let you know. There's two options, pay £25, which is like kind of just an analysis, if you want to put it that way, or I think it was £100 for the ability to kind of extract the data and put it on a new hard drive for you, which wasn't ideal, but begrudgingly I kind of went with that option. But they sent it off, had it for about a week, couldn't extract the data, so obviously I'm getting a bit concerned now that I've got this 2 events on it and a potential new event to go on it, and I can't do anything with either of the 3. And with the fact that this place is now saying, we can't do it, me anxiety increased, shall we say, about what was going on. And get it back, looking around online, and I discovered there's this thing called stiction, which is basically, if you imagine the head of a cassette, if you're old enough, when those 2 prongs come down and it stops midway, they'll stay there, aka they're stuck, aka stiction. So it stops there, and it kind of clamps itself to the disc that it's trying to read. So I got in touch with this kind of specialist, or supposed specialist, independent data extractor team who were based in town, Liverpool, and they took it in. I explained to them it might be this stiction issue. They kind of agreed that it probably is that. We'll send it off. Sends it off. I think it was about £400 ish, based on if they can recover the data and stuff like that. So by this point I'm thinking this 1 terabyte hard drive that probably cost me about 80 something quid has so far cost me close to 5, which is obviously not great, but I knew that the connections to my data that I had on there was much greater, certainly from the fact that I had to present these things back to paying clients, and also on the fact that it was a brand thing. Here I was at the very early days of my career, and all of a sudden I'm starting to think, have I had a am I having a bad experience here? How bad is this going to get? Anyway, me little anxiety was increased when the independent data team said that they couldn't do anything about it either, and the only option left would be to send it off to the main manufacturer, aka Seagate, well known, well used, heavily rounded data company who provided the original things. So not a shoddy network. Get in touch on their IT team or their help tech team and explained what I'd gone through so far, that my position was that I was a photographer starting out, and I had a couple of events on there that I'd been paid for, and I was scared about the brand impacts and obviously the clients at the end of it, that they couldn't redo the events that were on there. So they gave me a couple of options as well, and none of it was guaranteed at all, which obviously sent stress levels flying through the roof there. And their version of data extraction was to have it in I don't know what you call them. It's basically like a clean room, where you don't have any dust or anything like that, and everyone has to wear probably hazmat suits and whatever to be in there, gets decontaminated. And they said, obviously, this is the thing that we can do. Send it off to us, we'll have a look. 2 options again. I don't know what the 2 option thing is, but basically you can either we can try and fix the drive for you and send you that back. That's about £600. Or we could extract the data off it, if we can being a precise word in there, and we'll represent it back to you on one of our own more secure, I think it was like a 4 terabyte drive or something like that. So they give me the option of, we'll try and just fix it for you, which would be the 600 option, which obviously I was saying yes to. But then after they did it for about 2.5 weeks, something like that, they diagnosed it and said that the drive was totally broke, basically. So I don't know how you can break something without actually moving it or anything like that. But the only option then was to then swallow the close to, I think it was something 1,000 something euros, which I think was just over 1,000 British pounds for £80 hard drive that had corrupted, which was totally out of my control in my opinion, but because of that for such a long time, it was out of warranty, stuff like that.
Sorry to interrupt again, it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference if it was in warranty. It wouldn't make a blind bit of difference because it's they wouldn't cover the costs because it was in warranty. This is one of the problems with data in some respects, is it's still your responsibility to make sure you've got multiple copies of it, and this is the hard lesson that you've learnt and we've all learnt in different ways.
Thankfully early on. Yeah, so obviously the long and short of it was that I had to swallow the close to £1,100 that I currently paid out for an £80 drive, but as I've mentioned a couple of times there, the brand impact to me personally and the loss of files for the paying clients was paramount. Obviously at the time I was just starting out, so I didn't have £1,100 just sitting about to be able to do these things, and even though I've been paid by the clients, I wasn't exactly charging a lot at the time. So it was not something that I could weigh up. And with that, and with the fact that it's the process had kind of up to this point, it's probably taken close to about a month, more probably, close to 2. And for all of that time, all of that uncertainty, I'm dealing with having a new family, and I'm dealing with working a full-time job still. So the anxiety and the stress and the not knowing and the thought of a company that had just kind of got me head round actually trying out and to be a possible thing was, in my opinion, over. Like, it was done. And all of that compounded real heavy pressure, and I had to end up taking like kind of time away from my full-time job, because I found myself being very heavily stressed and not being myself around the people who I'm closest to, and talking differently about certain things, and I just couldn't concentrate on anything other than this issue, which was a very, very valuable lesson to learn, and I'm happy that now in hindsight I can say I'm happy about the experience that happened, because it taught me a lot of things, taught me a lot of different ways, like obviously as Clarky's mentioned there about having multiple backups. It certainly helped me change my storage protocol, if you want to put it that way. So not to go too much into detail, but everything that I now write there and then on the day, I keep on those cards. I bring them home and I put them to, I think it's a 4 terabyte drive, even though there's nowhere near full. I also back them up to a 1 terabyte drive just as a second copy, and I've got a home, I think it's I don't know if it's 8 or 12 terabyte home hub drive that basically doesn't move and totally stationary. So I basically have almost 4 copies now before I'll ever even think about removing that file from that card, formatting those cards. So my ability to control the data, to house the data, it's written into every terms and conditions that I do now. My at length levels that I go to making sure that this information is safe and secure as much as I can possibly help it. But the experience taught me, as I say, a lot of things, and it certainly set me to a very dark and horrible place of how much something that you love doing and you want to create for yourself can also have a negative effect, much like many things that any path kind of brings it, to the forefront. Anything that you're trying for yourself is scary enough, but then to have a problem within that is even worse. And thankfully, I got most, if not all, of the information back, even though it wasn't delivered in, the best way, in my opinion. I had to sift through thousands and thousands of data files to actually get back to the events that I had on there. But I delivered them back. I was very, very lucky that the paying clients at the time were very understanding, and they allowed me that time to do what I needed to do. I think probably because of the way I explained it to them, they understood that it wasn't actually a fault of mine, if you like, even though I probably think it should be, because I should have had multiple backups. But the way I kind of explained it is this happened without my control, and I think that was the kind
of. But that's the thing, isn't it? Though that's that's. I mean, I'm going to totally disagree with that. It's 100% your fault. There's no one to blame in that other than you. You can't, if it's that important, and I'm only saying this because I've been there. I've been in exactly this. Well, not exactly the same situation. I've been in the situation with a client's data, and I stood in the Apple store arguing with them, blaming their computer because I'd ran an update while doing something on Photoshop, and it died. Restarted, and my data went, and I tried to argue with them that this is their fault, and they were like, but it's not. Your data is your responsibility. And I remember him saying something to me like, if it's that important, why haven't you got more than one copy? And I remember that just like my head fell off. I was like, that's the most obvious thing ever when you've made the mistake.
Yeah, but until you've made that mistake, you would never know. And especially if you've got no real long-term technical experience and stuff like that. This is why I think it's important to cover that off. I think in hindsight, obviously now I am obviously that was my mistake because I should have had second copies. But when you're first starting out, or when you're not knowing, and I think even probably there's probably time saved, people who it's never happened to, and they're still working from OneDrives or cloud storage or whatever. And I think it's always worth telling a story, isn't it? Because you just don't know when it's going to happen, and it will happen, as you've pointed out previously, at some point.
Yeah, it's not a question of will it happen, it's when will it happen. I mean, it's solid state storage is more reliable. Knock on my microphone. Solid state storage is more reliable than the original spinning discs. The way I used to describe it to people was, imagine walking along with a record player on your shoulder and being surprised when your needle's jumping. That's the same principle on a smaller scale with more data of moving a hard drive around. Like, the needle should lock, the arm should lock, but sometimes when things happen quickly, it doesn't. I mean, I think yours is a very emotional story, and mine was very clinical. Mine was still life. I just spent 2 days back in the studio and and reshot everything. But the lessons from it are the hard ones. Like, you're saying, you'd never know without that knowledge. I 100% agree with you. But through my time of working in an Apple store, I used to tell everybody, like I'd be saying to them, where's your data stored? Oh, it's on a hard drive at home. It's not, that's not backed up then. That's your data. Well, no, it's on a hard drive, yeah, but if that's your only copy, that's not a backup. You only have a backup when you have 2 copies. And I can still
All
see that
4.
moment of realization with some people, because it's the same realization that I had, that if it's not in more than one place or on one drive, like going back a decade, I used to have a DVD. There's multiple DVDs. I used to keep one of them in my granddad's house in a fireproof box and one of them with me, and so there was always multiple copies in different places. You've got to adapt your backup strategy. Like with weddings now, or the last time I shot one, whenever that was before the world changed, I wouldn't wipe the memory cards until the bride and groom had their files. Like, I think memory's cheap enough. If people spend money on cameras and stuff like that, buying extra memory cards to make sure you're not deleting or wiping things in the day, or at least until it's backed up on other hard drives, that's where some of your investment should be. I think everyone will tell you different priorities of what you should buy. Weirdly, I was watching a video before about what the priorities of being a YouTuber at home should be. And it's not my priority list, because my priority list is being out with clients. If I can make videos like this, like we're doing, I'll pick other bits up as I'm going with it. But like data storage should be one of your top priorities. And I say, for me, memory cards are cheap enough now. You can get them for like 15-20 quid, from even cheaper on Black Friday sales, and just having enough to know you can get through a day and leave them to one side. That's something I would say is a good idea. And then, like you're saying, external hard drives. I shoot about, normally now I'm shooting somewhere in the region of 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes of data a month for a client. So my storage system is just getting insane. But you don't even need to think about that level until you've got the data to do it. But if you've got a wedding that you're working on, each wedding, I can't remember what the last time I shot one was, maybe 300 gig of data or something at the end of it. You need at least 2 drives that are going to house that at the end of that day, to make sure you've got 2 copies of everything. And for me, an even better choice would be, I like to keep the job I'm working on my computer, and then external copies as well. Again, just make it work for you, but just whatever you do, make sure you've got multiple copies of everything, because unless you don't have a backup. It's that black and white.
Joe, and you know what the other thing as well was, and I was thinking about it then, this sounds mad, but cost does kind of come into that. Like, obviously, as we've mentioned a couple of different ways there, and different systems you can use, but obviously everyone knows, or I assume everyone knows, that solid state drives are the way to go. And these like disc based drives are, at the time when it was happening to me, it wasn't as obvious a choice to kind of get a solid state drive, because obviously technology has advanced in the last however many years ago that was now, about 4 or 5, and solid states are now much more affordable, much more expanded, and readily available as well. But
sorry to interrupt, that again's relating to how you're going to store it, because desktop drives are nearly always traditional. Disc, got spinning discs in them. It's only portable drives and that have got flash storage in them, like your phones or the modern computers. Hard drives generally have them, and that comes down to anything. Like, and I know you've said it to me loads of times, as technology advances, costs come down. Pound for gigabyte, solid state is still way more expensive than a traditional drive. You can get like a terabyte traditional drive for like a 2.5-inch one for like probably 30 or 40 quid nowadays. You're still looking at 60 or 70 for a decent solid state. Again, I said decent, then it made me think of, it's about brands you can trust as well, because not all of them are made even. I know we talked about it. I bought a brand new Surf Express card for my Camry the other week. First job, corrupted on me, couldn't be wiped, had to go back. Luckily, the client I was with, we knew at the time and we reshot what we needed to do. But if I'd have walked away from that job to go back and back up, I'd have had nothing, absolutely nothing to show. And even at that point, saying it's not my fault, well, that wasn't my fault. But with hindsight, if it's something that can't be done again, there are still ways to record video to multiple sources. You can get around these ways, but I wouldn't have thought of that until this had happened.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, you just never know. There's just no knowing. So you've got to pre-know without knowing. That's even a thing.
Yeah, and I think I've unfortunately, not for me, but two different stories spring to mind of people asking me to quote cost on shooting their weddings, and I didn't think it was very expensive, but they said it was above their budget. That's fair enough. This is not just on two. This has happened loads of times, but 2 times in particular, I found out that the photographers lost the images. One did it because she shot all day to one card, and that card corrupted and everything went. And another one apparently didn't, or did back up but moved everything to one hard drive, and similar thing to you, that hard drive failed. I will sit down with potential clients, and as much as I'll be like, "Hey, I'm Clarky, I'll shoot your wedding, I'm dead fun to be around, I'll put you at ease, and I've been doing it for a long time," I will bore them to death talking about data precautions and backup and the way I work with it. And I'll say to them, if you don't use me as a photographer, please talk to your photographer about how they will back that data up, to make sure that, and you, bride and groom shouldn't have to consider that. They really shouldn't. And I know I've probably lost out jobs because I've talked too much about stuff like that. But for me, it's important. It really is. And, it's a massive part of every job. Like, arguably it's the biggest part of the job, because if the data's not there afterwards, the job might as well not happen.
True.
That's probably come across really stupidly, and there's probably people, the 3 people who watch this, 100% of them might call me out on me bullshit there of sounding like I'm talking out my arse. But if you haven't got do you call it a product? If you haven't got what you've been paid or employed or contracted to do at the end of it, what's the point in any of it? If you've done it through skimping on through the drives, or using a drive and there's problems with it, or just not having enough backups, to do it, I don't know. It can be a bit of a pointless exercise, can't it? Apart from a learning curve for you, which is a very expensive one, and like you said, the brand was always more important to you than the cost.
Yeah, man, I'm a big brand believer. Like, I've heavily, like, anytime I have anything new, you've seen me do it, I start something off new, and the first thing I think about is like, how much branding can I get behind that particular thing, irrespective of what it is. So, brand new domains, brand new email, we were even talking about it just before coming on here. Are you one of these people who starts a new email for everything? And the answer is yeah, because I'm so heavy about how the brand impact is and how it's foreseen. But that situation was just totally unexpected and totally like unforeseen. And this comes down to maybe something to do with so many people want to do something without having any real prior knowledge. Obviously I never set out at any stage to be a photographer or creator. So as far as I was concerned, I was just a normal person finding my way. And as you've just said it there, if you speak to a normal, not quote unquote normal person about data and storage on things, chances are they won't have a lot of ideas about multiple storage options or what different storage options you might be able to get hold of. So because I was still in that infancy term, I was still a bit like naive and still a bit silly around how important data and stuff is, which is why I always come back to the good hindsight of I was very lucky and very happy that it happened so early on, because it's something I've now been able to look at as a good life lesson, good learning curve, before I've pushed on to do the bigger things that I've come to be doing and kind of gone on with my little career as it's ploughing along.
And I think that something to not lose sight of there is, don't be complacent about it, because I've had data losses recently, and excuse me, got something in my mouth. I've had data losses recently, and I don't feel I could have been any more prepared for backing my data up. But when the system you're using, and I'm not asked about, again, no one's watching these videos anyway, but Drobo, as far as I'm concerned, piece of shit. It's killed off several drives. It's been back to them for repair. Their excuses, it's hypersensitive. It knows when drives are going to fail, so it stops them working. I had 3 8-terabyte drives go in the space of a week, one of which was brand new. I don't believe I was that unlucky with the actual drives. I think it was the system itself. And because 3 went, I'd lost, it was only set for 2 of the 5 drives to give me the redundancies I needed. So I'd lost, the data was gone, and the only way to retrieve it on the existing data If there was anything left, I had to get a brand new Drobo, take the drives out, put them in the same slots and turn it back on and hope that it fired up. Cost wise, that was going to cost a lot of money, and the potential was it was like archived work that had guaranteed clients it would be kept for 12 months after the job. Chances of them phoning me up and saying, can we have all that work again, is very slim, but I've contracted myself to it. This leads me on to what I think is one of the best backup options you can do. Now, this backup option is not for the end of the day. You need to back up multiple times. You know, you need to physically know. Again, for me, if I come back, I'm always using weddings as a reason because I think they're the most time sensitive, longest jobs you'll do. Everything else can be done and backed up and checked through the day. I think personally what I've dealt with apart from weddings. So when I get in from a wedding, I won't go to bed until there's 3 copies of everything. One of those copies might be everything left on SD cards, but the other 2 are on various drives. So that's the most important one as far as I'm concerned. Get it backed up, back it up, and if you can, back it up again. But after the stress of these drives dying the other week and thinking, what the fuck am I going to do? You know, do I spend all this money on a new system to potentially, you know, not need to recover the data? I remember that I want to say it's $6 a month. I should have looked after we last spoke about this, but I pay a monthly fee for a company called Backblaze, and as far as I'm concerned, it's amazing. Backblaze literally sits on your Mac, might be on PC, and in the background it trickles all your data up to their cloud. It's been doing this for years, and I've never paid enough attention to it to really be concerned with what it's doing. But the clever thing about it is it will back up drives that are plugged into your Mac as well. And over the last however many months, it's been backing up my Drobo, which had something like 13, 14 terabytes worth of data on it. Been backing it up to their cloud. So when you go onto their system, you can click on the drive, click on the drop down box, and it shows you all the files. And it was all there. And for $170, $180, you can choose what will fit on an 8 terabyte drive, and they will post you that 8 terabyte drive. Cost me about $50 postage to get it shipped to the UK from the States, but again, still a lot cheaper than me buying a whole new system to replace it for potentially not getting the data back. But yeah, the beauty is, and the job. But the beauty of it is, and this is what my favourite thing about this system is, if you send them that drive back within 30 days, once you've recovered your data, they refund you the $180, and all you're paying is postage. So for a system that works in the background that I'd forgotten about, basically, I mean, I know it's there, I see the little thing ticking over in the corner, but I'd forgotten about what it was doing, not the potential of what it was saving me from. And it's basically, I think it cost me $50 for them to ship it and maybe 20 quid for me to send it back. So what's that? Maybe about 60 quid all in to save 2 or 3 big loads of data off clients that, again, I feel I was protected enough against that loss. But it turns out when you get fucking hit with 3 drives failing you in a week, you know, even I'm not prepared for that. And I'm now looking again of how I can change my approach to backing up. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about, I am going to talk about it, but I'm not going to go into detail. At the moment, my backup system's not working because Apple, with their newest update, have killed Thunderbolt communication with the M1 Mac. So I'm fucked. I'm now going back to old ways of literally dragging and dropping onto multiple external drives just so I've got backups of everything.
Isn't that weird though? Because their whole their biggest thing is the Thunderbolt drive. Like, they invented it.
No, they didn't.
No, what I mean, like they're like the one that's accompanied to it, I think anyway.
Well, Thunderbolt's just a technology like USB or anything, but the problem is that they're getting so secure on their systems that like the Thunderbolt drive was working, but like the Drobo system works all with the enclosure, whereas the new system I've got by OWC, I think it's a soft RAID, so it's the software that runs on the Mac that talks to the drive, and basically that software didn't work, so I had to get a beta of that and then the update. My own fault for letting it do automatic updates, but then it's just killed that, so that there's no communication between it whatsoever. But then it's the time-old argument of who's responsible for making sure, Apple pushing out the software and you want your stuff to work on their hardware and software. You need to be on top of these potential problems through the beta testing. And, the Drobo hasn't worked in months and months and months, and Drobo haven't bothered to do anything about it. I'm not talking about my personal one that killed the drives. I mean, their system doesn't work on M1 Thunderbolt Max, and they haven't bothered doing anything about it, which is one of the reasons I moved away from them, besides all the fucking issues with hard drives. So my point is with this, you can't be prepared enough. No, you can't be prepared enough. You're never going to be prepared enough. I'm not, and I thought I was. The only thing that's not stressing me is at the moment, the data is still all on the drives, on the OWC thing I've got. I just can't get access to it. But Backblaze. I say it's not an instant backup, it's not an instant solution, but if you've got it running all the time on your Mac, when your Mac's just sat there idling over, and it does it so much that it doesn't even, I've never noticed it affecting my internet, and it could just completely save your ass.
So not that we're sponsored by Backblaze or anything like that, we discussed this before, but I think on your experience with it and on the way that it sounds, I think, and for what they actually provide, for in my opinion, if you're in the position, as you said before, if you're in the position to need that type of data recovery, whatever level that might be, that's quite an affordable rate to be able to fully secure yourself, or at least majority of the way secure yourself. So Backblaze,
yeah,
non-sponsored, but we would like to have a little throw-off sponsor from you if you've got a couple of little free accounts spare, and maybe even to give out. We could give them to someone. We could give them to one of our three listeners.
Yeah. Then we've made it. We'll be rolling in it. But I think if you look at, again, doing anything like this, the points in you and I wanting to set this up, and with lockdown restrictions ending soon or easing, we're hopefully going to be able to go out and do some things. The element of, oh, well, it's easy for you to say that because you've got all this and you've got that, and you and I are a bit of a contrast of where we are on our journeys and stuff like that. But with regards to, like, I've watched tons of videos. When I was looking at this OWC buy, I watched loads of videos of YouTubers, and the story's the same. For a YouTuber, for a photographer, for a videographer, everyone will start out on a drive like this, which is just a traditional 2.5-inch spinning drive. That's something I've had for years. That's like a backup. I'm not bothered about what goes on with that. I just throw some stuff on it when I need to clear some space, when I know it's somewhere else. And you'll have several of them. And then everyone will but if you've got enough file storage to justify a NAS or a DAS, is it DAS? Yeah, direct attached storage or network attached storage, you will move up to these other systems like I've done over the years. And, hopefully for you, when restrictions ease and you go back to work and much more, and you'll get to a point where you go, well, I'm going to have to reassess this. It doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter when you get to that point of needing all that stuff. Just make sure you've got multiple copies now. That's the simplest way to look at it. Even if your multiple copies are 64 gig SD cards where you've got two of them with exactly the same stuff on, put away somewhere, marked off, like, with the right protect switch flicked on it. Whatever's the cheapest option to have multiple. I've just contradicted myself there about cheap options, but what I mean is, if you've got multiple versions of it, you'd have to be massively unlucky for that to go tits up. Yeah,
that's the whole top and bottom of it, isn't it? Multiple options, multiple storage, and just protect everything. But it was funny the way you were mentioning, like, everyone should be getting to a certain point, or everyone should start to understand their position and focus time on, their redundancy options, if you want to put it that way. I wouldn't say one of the nicer things for me, what I experienced when I was thinking that I was totally on my own in this situation, because I'd started within that time, that like kind of 2-month time frame, even though I ended up having to take about 5 or 6 weeks off away from everybody at the time. I felt very, very isolated and very like, this is my problem and my problem only. Even, my partner and stuff like that, Becky, even she was a bit like, obviously, blah, 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 trying to like talk me up really. but it still felt so personal and so like immediately identifiable to me. And I was reading on like forums and stuff about if other people that it's happened to and they've ended up getting sued and all that type of stuff. So it wasn't even just the expense anymore of, you know, the things that I had to pay for to actually try and get this fixed, because it was a try at the time. It was, you know, what if these clients wanted to, which they had full right to do, you know, to try and take me and get me sued, or, you know, loss of whatever, and, you know, it just destroys the whole environment and the whole opportunity for them of, in that case, getting married. You can't redo the joy of that day, irrespective. So it's like, even if it would have got them back, they still could have said, you know, blah blah blah, this wasn't the way we expected it, you've ruined our experience. So it was all of that. But the little console, what I was leading on to, is after about a year or two had passed from that point, and I'd kind of let it drop off me shoulders a little bit more, even though I've never ever forgot about it, I never ever will. Somebody who me and you look up to, I think, quite heavily, and probably everybody in the creative community would know about, Mr. Peter McKinnon. We were ranting into every single
Need a
video.
foghorn to go off every time he gets mentioned in one of our videos.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Bloody hell. But I was looking everywhere, and I don't even know why, because obviously at the time I was very heavily into him, which literally everything he did, I wanted to know everything that he was saying and doing. And for whatever reason, I'd never seen it before, but this one day, I don't even know why, I just typed in, you know, hard drive malfunction or whatever. So yeah, Mr. Peter McKinnon, absolute extraordinaire in my opinion, who's, you know, battered the world with like his ability and really reached a high level in my opinion, across the creator community, told the story of that it happened to him, exact same situation. And this is somebody that we look up to as, or some people would look up to as being the absolute top of the top, like cream of the crop, the best. And he talks heavily about his multiple different ways that he backs up, because of a situation like that happened. And obviously that happened probably early on in his career. I can't imagine it's going to happen to him ever now. The fact that he probably gets everything thrown at him.
Yeah, but you
as well.
say I was going to say, if that's the same video you're talking about, I've seen, don't Lacey send him like a 48 terabyte system, which is about £8,000.
So that's what I mean. So it's a different situation from him in that sense, but it happened to him, and he learns a lot from it. And this is the big thing. It's a great lesson to learn, but it's not a great experience to go through to learn it. And if you can get a story from the likes of us or him or anybody, because there's multiple million stories out there, you're never going through it on your own, and you're never going to know when it's going to happen. It will just happen, and it'll turn your world upside down, and it doesn't matter who you are, if you're the best or the worst. So having these redundancy systems in place and really thinking about your storage and explaining to people how you will facilitate their data once you've actually created anything for them, whether it's, you know, a portrait, a wedding, a christening, a video highlights reel, whatever, make sure they know that they're secure.
What a perfect way to end it. Also, because my recorder's thrown up an error that it's skipping frames, which is never good. So hopefully it's just popped up and it hasn't been on for the last hour and I haven't noticed it.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Sound? Yeah, because we're not doing this again. But hopefully soon we're gonna get out and play in the real world anyway.
Yeah, I think this is a good important thing. Let me just make sure my camera's still on. My timer hasn't gone off. No, still cool. So I think it's very important to, and maybe it'd be like a nice video or a very small mini video about this. But yesterday, 22nd of February, we kind of, I wouldn't say green lighted, but we kind of got the news that we were waiting for, that everyone was waiting for, not just creators. That like the ability to remix with people and the population is coming back. By their expectations, June, 21st of June, I think it is, to be exact. So between now and then, as Clarky's just been alluding to, is we'll be able to actually get out and do more things in the real world, and it's not always this environment. And, you know, even though you can swap your office around and swap your lights around and maybe change something, it'd be great for us to actually get out and be our full creators that we like to be, and as he says, in the real world, on the job. So I don't know if anyone watches I don't even know if anyone watches them, but if anyone does watch these and thinks, oh yeah, they just sit in the same rooms all the time, this will become more expansive and more real world, and we probably will follow each other around on jobs and show you how we do things whilst we're doing them, and that will give a vetted insight into a more theory and application process.
The thing that I'd say to that as well is like talking about just sitting in a room and just chatting. Like I've learned tons about this gear from the last 5 videos we've done, or technically 5.5 because we did one that we couldn't use. I don't know what this one's going to be usable now, but like these errors that I'm getting with my video recorder, I got this so I could use it on jobs, and I haven't had the chance yet, but I'm glad, because what I'm learning here is like I know what this error means for most people. It means the cable's not good enough to pass the signal on without losing frames. But sitting in a room and using your equipment would, again, this goes back to you and I saying, let's just do something. Let's not, the quality of each video has kind of gone up and down because we're learning with what we're doing. It couldn't be more important than ever to just you can't get out there with your gear, so use it inside in whatever situation you can.
Yeah. I mean, risk getting a fine by all means if you want to go and try and do something somewhere else, but not ideal.
I'll have to put a little thing at the bottom of the screen here. We do not condone this, even though we said by all means. Ryan doesn't have any authority.
Yeah, this is not guidance. But no, yeah, I think being able to use it, like I'd literally never done a video before in any capacity, really, until we started this. And since this, I've started like a little YouTube channel about other things, gear, which we won't put any links in. We'll let people try and find that themselves. But and I've started to get better in multiple videos, and my confidence has grown with using video and the setup of how to create a video, and that's all being brought on by trying things out and learning new things, because I think you're always got the ability to get better and learn more, and if you can learn by people who've gone through that churning process, your journey from A to B will be 10 times faster, extrapolated. You'll fly through it, so you can learn faster and hopefully get further with your prospective careers. I think that's the end now.
Yeah, let's go with it. Let's end it there.
I don't know if it was better or worse than the last one.
I felt like, because I knew your story a bit better, I didn't want to then throw another one of mine in, like, to add another 10-15 minutes to the video. It didn't need it. I felt like your story was good enough to then talk about the solutions rather than more problems on my part. So, yeah, I think it worked. Let's just remember to say like, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because we fucking remembered, yeah.